Europeans seem very confused by the fascination that we Euro-Americans have with our ancestral homelands. They just don't understand why we often say that we're from or going back to a country we've never been to before. I really can't explain it, but I do know what that draw feels like because I felt it before, during, and after our visit to my ancestral fatherland. And I gotta say, I'm a little envious because it feels like they have many of the same advantages that we Americans have, but a lot more of the benefits.
We're going to talk more about that in this video, but before we do, if you are dreaming of moving abroad or slow traveling, then hit that subscribe button because it might be easier than you think and we could show you how to do it.
If you watch any of our previous videos, you probably know we're talking about Austria, which is my fatherland. That's where my dad's side of the family came from. They left in 1891 looking for a better life for their kids, and they went to America. And I gotta say, things have changed quite a bit. Life was a lot different in Austria in the late 1800s. Now, if you look at the two countries, Austria has a lot of the same advantages that we Americans have. And I think the first one is they have a really strong, developed economy that's very similar to the United States. In 2025, their GDP per capita is 61,000 compared to 66,000 for the US, and it's one of the highest in Europe.
They also have the third most powerful passport in the world compared to the US, which comes in at number 8. And they have excellent healthcare. CEO World ranks Austria at number 16 worldwide for healthcare, and the US is ranked number 15, so they are right next to each other.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe 15 for the US, but that's my personal bias there. They also have great education. Austria ranks number 35 by World Population Review. The US ranks 31. Again, I think that's kind of subjective. US does have fantastic universities.
Well, I felt like I got a really good public school education growing up in the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, my little farm town in Kansas, I wouldn't rank very high. All right, so the advantages that we commonly associate with the US, like a powerful passport, good healthcare, education, and a good economy, those all apply to Austria. But there's a lot of things that are much better in Austria, which makes me a little envious that I didn't get to grow up there.
Starting with safety, it is the second safest country in the world after Iceland, and the US is way down on that list, unfortunately. In 2023, Austria had a homicide rate of 0.876, which is almost 7 times lower than the US at 5.763.
Safety is never overrated, but the thing I liked the most was the transportation. They have a national train system that is part of the Euro-Rail network, so you can go pretty much anywhere in Europe on that. We actually took it to Slovakia for a couple of days, so stay tuned for that video. It'll be coming up next. While we were in Vienna, we bought the 7-day visitor pass. It was 35 euros each, and it's a hop-on, hop-off honor system, so you don't actually scan your ticket or anything when you get on the trains or enter the train station. So you just buy your ticket and then you just take whatever you want. The tram, the subway, the bus system. I mean, you can have access to all of it with just your one ticket.
Yeah, I loved it. It was by far the easiest and most seamless public transportation system we have ever used. And the fact that you don't even have to mess around with trying to get in and out of the stations by scanning your card or your credit card or whatever. Oh my gosh, it just made life so much easier. It was fantastic.
I know, we rode it all over the city, and the tram goes pretty much on every major street, so you don't have to walk very far to get a tram stop. And if you want faster ride, it's a little bit smoother. They have their U-Bahn, which is like a subway system, although it's partially above ground. Then they also have the bus system. It was just amazing. We just really used it to go all over that city.
Yeah, plus there's trains and buses and trams running constantly so that you don't have to spend a lot of time waiting, which I appreciate because it was kind of chilly.
Yeah, and they do have Uber and Bolt, which we took a couple of times from the airport, which another thing, the traffic from the airport, it was backed up, it was rush hour, and all the drivers got off to the sides of the road on the highway, creating this lane down the middle. And I asked our driver, I'm like, is that the law? He said that everybody just gets over to create an emergency lane down the center of the highway so that emergency vehicles can get through if they need to. And I said, well, what happens if you just go out and like zoom down the middle? He said, oh boy, you'd get a lot of dirty looks for that. And it would be really bad if you did that. Like, he didn't even consider doing that, which I thought was fascinating. Can you imagine in America if we did that, if we all spread over? I mean, everybody would just go right down the middle of the highway.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was so orderly. I've never ever seen that before.
It was orderly. And speaking of that, it's so clean, especially after we had just come from Palermo, which some of the people in our comments described it as filthy. I have to agree with that. It was so dirty, it was kind of hard to accept. But Austria, the exact opposite. It was so clean. There was no trash anywhere. There were always people out picking it up and making sure that it was all clean and tidy. I really appreciated that.
I loved all of the green space. There are parks everywhere. These big, beautiful, massive parks with tons of trees and incredible flowers. Often I felt like we were in a painting. It was glorious.
It really was pretty amazing. And the parks were huge. Like there was a park that runs down, it's like an island in the middle of the Danube that's 12 miles long. And there are biking trails along the whole thing. So you can literally hike or bike that whole island if you want to. It goes almost all the way to the airport. It's crazy. Then there's the Prater Park, which it had like 4 miles, I think is what I calculated it as, 4 miles long. And it was huge, wide too. And people were jogging and walking their dogs. There's an amusement park in there that you can go to if you like that kind of thing. And it's free to enter. You can just walk around that. The rides cost, but you can walk around the park without paying.
There's a lot of smaller parks too, which everybody was out enjoying. We saw a lot of people just lounging around, picnicking or walking their dogs around there, observing the beautiful statues and the sculptures and the fountains. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, we stayed just a couple blocks off the canal that runs through the city. And that also had walking trails and biking trails all along the canal. It's like everywhere you went, there was some sort of park and people were hanging out in it and biking and jogging.
I know we said we took a lot of public transportation, but we also walked like 6 to 9 miles every day.
I need new shoes after we were there. It is super walkable and pedestrian friendly. Cars stop. If you go to cross the street, the traffic stops for you, even if you're not at a crosswalk. We're just not used to that. I mean, it's happened to us in Europe, but in other parts, Latin America and Southeast Asia, they just don't stop. They just keep going. Mm-hmm. So it's really nice when we're here in Europe and they actually do stop. They had trails that were clearly marked with like pedestrians on one side and bikes on the other, so you knew where to walk. I like that level of organization.
Yes, once again, very orderly.
It was. Oh, my fatherland. So orderly. I love it.
There are also pedestrian only areas, which of course we always love. It's always nice when you don't have to watch out for cars, period, or trams, because now you got to think about the trams and the buses too.
Yeah, those trams, they're kind of quiet too.
They are.
And there are a lot of electric vehicles, so you got to be really careful that you hear them. And electric bikes and mopeds and everything. It's extremely quiet there for as big a city as it is.
They had great food. The grocery shopping was excellent. Really good produce. We could find everything we wanted at the grocery stores. And we ate out a lot like we always do, because the restaurants there were also fantastic. You're going to find a wide variety of cuisine. We had our very first ever pizza experience where I actually cut the pizza with scissors that they provided, which at first I was like, well, this is kind of odd, but they were super sharp and it was very easy. And you know what? It made a lot of sense.
It did. Yeah, you can just cut off the slice that you want.
Yeah.
It was pretty nice.
That was ingenious.
It was.
But of course, we also had to have the traditional Austrian food like the schnitzel and the strudel.
Yeah, we had apple strudel. It wasn't quite as good as my grandma made, but it also wasn't made with any dairy products. That's probably why.
Yeah, not a ton of butter.
Yeah, not a ton of butter. So it was really cool to be there and experience that.
We experienced another unique cultural aspect, which was anytime I ordered a glass of wine, they would bring a glass of water with it, which, I mean, it just makes sense, but I've never experienced that before. So we asked one of the servers and she's like, well, I don't know. It's just the way we do it here. Either people just want to be able to drink more, or they just want to be able to have the wine with the water so that they are continuing to stay hydrated, which is very ingenious.
Mm-hmm. Or she said also some people like to use it as a palate cleanser before they drink their wine, but a couple times ordered beer and I did not get my glass of water, which I was pretty upset about.
Yeah, it's just for wine.
Just for wine. I guess you don't need a palate cleanser for beer.
I guess not. It kind of reminded us of Paris, but just more accessible. The city is stunning. Vienna was absolutely beautiful, but is not as big and overwhelming as Paris was. Very easy to get around, as I think we talked about quite a bit already. And it wasn't as expensive either.
I think my favorite part though was English. It was spoken by everyone fluently, everyone we spoke to. There was no language barrier at all. And they spoke with an American accent, which I found surprising because I would have expected it to be more of a British accent given the proximity. But because of movies and television and music, most people spoke with an American accent. So it was so easy for us to communicate.
Before we talk about the most amazing things we experienced in Vienna, we are excited to talk about our new Turtle Travel Club.
It's a private community for slow travelers over 40 who want to explore the world with more purpose, connection, and community.
When you join, you'll get access to our member-only community of slow travelers that's already over 100 strong, and fellow turtles are already connecting and making new friends.
You'll also get access to group trips and global meetups with us and fellow travelers. Our first 2 leaps to Cuenca, Ecuador sold out almost immediately, but we still have a couple spaces left on our 3rd leap to Panama City if you would like to join us.
This is a new travel club, so we're offering a 50% discount off the membership fee for early adopters. So now is the perfect time to join us if you want to slow travel, but you don't want to go it alone.
Or if you just want to make some new friends who have common interests. So scan this QR code right here to learn about all the amazing benefits of joining, or go to ameliaandjp.com/club.
Okay, and now back to the amazing things that we experienced in Vienna, starting with the art and the culture. Wow, it was mind-blowing. All of the composers that brought forth all that incredible classical music like Mozart and Schubert and Strauss. You can find their statues all over the city, and you can listen to them in concerts and hear the amazing street performers performing their music on their violin. So instead of hearing the buskers doing the guitar, we heard violin music.
I know, I thought that was amazing. We've actually seen that in Europe quite a bit.
We have.
So amazed with their incredible talent to be able to play a violin like that, just sitting on a bench in the street. That's shocking to me, and they're so good at it.
There are incredible artists that come from Vienna as well, painters such as Egon Schiele and Gustav Klimt, and a wide variety of others that you can go and see in one of the many museums.
I did really like the Leopold Museum. That was really cool. We didn't actually take pictures inside. I wish we would have, but the exhibit there was great. So I really liked the Belvedere. We went to the upper Belvedere. You can also go to the lower Belvedere, and they have a modern art museum there, but it was just too much. We just bought the single pass to the upper Belvedere. I just couldn't have seen all of that.
No, it was a lot to take in, but man, I highly recommend going to the Leopold Museum. It was so immersive in there because for me, the Belvedere was amazing, but it was a bit too crowded. We had so much time to really experience the art throughout the Leopold Leopold Museum, and then also afterwards we had a great meal at the restaurant.
Yeah, we did.
And then we left outside and the weather had cleared up and it was perfect.
Yeah, we got a nice afternoon day of filming and walking around the city and seeing the incredible sights. If you go to Vienna, you have to check out the Summer Palace. It opened in 1700. The Belvedere used to be the Winter Palace. That's where the museum is now. And this was the summer one. I guess they had to have a place in the country back then. The thing is massive. I can't believe how huge it was. And the grounds were free to enter. There's actually a museum inside the palace, but we did not do that because we were a bit museumed out by then. And we chose to just walk around the grounds. It's massive. It's like the size of Central Park in New York City, where all of the grounds are around this palace.
I was impressed by how it felt like we had pockets of it completely to ourselves because there's trails that wind through that area too. Even though there were a lot of tourists there, it was very peaceful and very calming. There's a lot of beautiful sculptures and statues and fountains you could go experience. And they also had a cafe there too. That was very popular.
That's where we got the apple strudel.
Yes, it was fantastic. It was a great experience, and I'm really glad we took the time to go out there. We also had perfect weather on that day too.
Yeah, it was
beautiful.
perfect. All right, and another thing we love about Vienna, and you can get this anywhere, is just walk down the street and look up. The architecture is incredible. The buildings are extremely well maintained. Nothing's run down or falling apart. It's so orderly and structured, and things just kind of go together. It kind of reminded us a little bit of Paris, and it was a bit different, but still similar.
I loved the fact that it felt very grand. Everything felt very grandiose in a good way. It was just very understated, very elegant, but ornate at the same time. time because there's so much attention to detail on all of the architecture. So you have all of the little finishes and the different muted colors and different textures and sculptures. And remember, then we went and saw that amazing clock. I mean, there's just detail everywhere.
But like every place, there are some downsides. And I have to say, the first one was the weather. We were there in late May and it was cold, like colder than,
cold.
I mean, the coldest I've ever been in May, I think. There was a high of 53 degrees Fahrenheit for several days after we first arrived. The temperature wasn't even the worst part. It was the wind. It was so windy. And when you're walking down the street in 53 Fahrenheit and the wind is just blasting you, we were cold. I was wearing gloves, a jacket. Amelia had a scarf on. I mean,
yeah, I went and bought this new sweater. We both went and had to buy a couple more long sleeve shirts because coming from Southeast Asia, we were not prepared, nor were we acclimated to that kind of weather.
Yeah.
It was chilly.
It was very chilly, especially for late May. And in the winter, it's very cold there. I would love to go see the Christmas markets, Amelia. We're going to have to buy some winter coats so that we can go see that at some point.
At some point. We have a home base, and then I could store my parkas and my heavy winter boots. Then we could talk about it.
Yeah.
But there's no way we could do that now slow traveling.
I don't think I would want to live there year round. I think the weather, it's just too cold and too windy with that wind and cold air coming down off the Alps and blowing through the city. I think it would be ideal in the warmer months, but I was really surprised how chilly it was.
Well, and we got rained on several times.
It rained a lot there. And we had to really kind of adjust our schedule. It felt like we were in the mountains, even though Vienna's not really in the mountains. It would be nice in the morning. Like we'd wake up, it'd be sunny and kind of warmish. And then by lunchtime, it would cloud up and it would rain. And then in the evening, the sun would come back out. And that happens to us several days.
It did.
Overall, it was very kind of cloudy and gloomy there. I wasn't really expecting that. But I guess when we were flying in, it was so green, like everything was green. And Amelia even made a comment like how green it was. Well, I guess it's green because it rains a lot there.
Yeah, it's green for a reason, which also leads us to our next downside, which were our allergies. I have not had so many issues with allergies in quite a while, and I was a sneezing machine.
Yeah, we both were. It was pretty brutal. There was just so much like seeds and pollen in the air, and there's so many trees and grass, and that's what really bugs Amelia. So I'm not surprised she was even having more trouble with it than I was.
Yeah, it was still worth it. It didn't stop me from going outside. But if you're a seasonal allergy sufferer, you're going to want to make sure you are prepared.
Another thing that really didn't seem to fit in this beautiful city was the graffiti. Luckily, it wasn't on like the famous buildings. The beautiful architecture had not been graffitied. It was pretty much limited to like underneath the bridges and some of the overpasses, like for the bike trails and the bridges and stuff. But I'm not a huge graffiti art person, and some of it is art and some of it was nice. A lot of it is just graffiti. Just didn't seem to fit there in this gorgeous city.
I agree. It was definitely a bit of an eyesore in certain areas. But what I was surprised about were the amount of smokers. I don't know why. I guess I had it in my head it was going to be more like Paris, especially because the vibe felt more like Paris. And I was surprised by the lack of smokers there, but they made up for it in Vienna.
Yeah, I guess that trend hasn't made it there yet. There were also a lot of unexpected charges. Like you have to pay for a lot of things that in other countries are just free, like public restrooms. We went to the Vienna Central train station on our way to Slovakia, and I went to use the restroom, and you have to pay 60 euro cents to use it. And if I have to pay for a bathroom, I'm fine with that, but it better be nice. And it was not. It was a dump. It was dirty. The urinals had trash and gum in them. There was only one soap machine that worked at the sink. None of the air dryers worked, and there was luckily one that had paper towels. It was just terrible. It's one of the worst public bathrooms, I think, outside Lake Chapala, where I used one there. That still set the baseline for the worst public bathroom ever. But this was a close second, and I had to pay 60 cents for it. I had to pay 25 cents for that one in Chapala.
You're right. If you have to pay for a bathroom, you expect it to be clean and maintained. You know, a lot of stuff in Vienna, you can enter part of it for free, but then everything is an add-on, and that can add up quickly. So you definitely need to prepare for that. So like like JP mentioned, we went to the amusement park and you can enter that area for free, which is fun. But if you want to ride those rides, they're pretty expensive. So we decided to do the Ferris wheel because that's kind of our thing. But
Although I'm not sure it is anymore.
I know, because it was expensive. It was €6 each, and it was over like that.
It was less than 10 minutes for sure.
Yeah.
I think we only went around 3 times, and there were only 2 other cars with occupants in it. So it's like, come on, give us a couple extra spins for €12, which is about $15, to go up there in this thing for 3 turns. I felt like that was a ripoff.
Or I guess this is inflation, the amusement park inflation around the world.
Yeah, so those are some of the downsides. The other major one was Amelia's dentist appointment. So she
Yeah.
broke her tooth in Palermo. I wrote about this in the newsletter. We mentioned it in our Palermo video. It was right before we were getting ready to leave, a couple of days before on the weekend, and we couldn't get her in Palermo. So we just thought we'd get the crown done in Vienna when we arrived, and she already had a dentist lined up and everything. So we went our first day to get her new crown process started.
To my mind, it was an emergency by the time we got there, but we paid emergency pricing.
Yeah, and what we learned afterwards is that a lot of people in Austria actually go to Hungary for their dental tourism because it's so much cheaper. And we were just surprised by that. I expected Austria and Europe in general, the healthcare costs are so much lower. I'm just so surprised that the cost of a crown there was more than what we would have paid in the US for the same thing. And it was good quality work. They did a fantastic job. But as I wrote about in last week's newsletter, that we could have flown to Tirana, Albania, stayed for 3 nights there, and flown back and saved about $1,200 off of that crown. But we were only there for a limited time. We had all of our travel planned to leave Vienna. We couldn't extend it, so we just decided, well, we're just going to get it done.
Well, and I do feel like I got excellent care. So I will say that. I did go to a private dentist, and that does cost more money, but it was fixed in like 2 days.
All right, let's talk about the final downside, which is the visas, because
Yeah.
they don't really have a lot of visa options. It's not very easy to live there. They do have an independent means visa, but you're gonna have to learn German to get that one. They only give out a few each year, so they're really difficult to get. And they do not have a citizenship by descent program for people like me whose family left over 100 years ago. And that's a kind of a bummer that they don't have any path to citizenship or residency that would work for us.
You can go there with a work visa if you get hired by a company, or if you want to study there. They do have some other options. They're just not as easy or plentiful compared to other countries like Spain, for example.
Yeah.
All right, JP, so what do you think about your fatherland? I know you were really disappointed you can't do the citizenship by descent, but could you handle it there overall?
I would love to have an Austrian passport, and I absolutely loved it there. I loved the people, the city. It felt like I was going home, and I can't explain this feeling, but I understand now why so many Euro Americans say they have this feeling when they go back. And it really did feel like I was going home. I felt an inexplicable connection to this country, and I would love to spend the warmer months there.
The warmer months, yeah, exactly, because it was chilly in May, and I can't even imagine what it would be like there in January. But I loved it too. I absolutely loved it. Vienna was stunning. I would love to visit more of the country. I didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I wish we could have extended our stay.
Yeah, I wish we would have stayed longer. So have you been to Vienna? Do you have any recommendations for places where people absolutely have to see if they go there? Let us know what you think in the comments.
Before you go, make sure to check out the Turtle Travel Club by clicking the link here to learn more about it.
And if you missed our video from Palermo, Italy, then check that one out next right here.
That is all we have for this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
Ciao.
Ciao.